we go. So if you, like I say, if you have to leave early, or whatever happens. So let's see where we're at here. How am I doing? Okay, we got 21. Oh, 21. How about that? We've reached mature. No, well, what is it? It used to be when 21 you could vote. Now you could vote and drink, but I guess depending upon where you're at, 21 doesn't mean much anymore for most places. Okay. So let's see. Where's the word? Mute all. Mute everybody. Then what happens? Oh, good. Okay, so I guess I'm the only one that I didn't get muted. I muted everybody so we can get started. That way, if you sneeze or whatever, it won't disrupt everything. Spencer, you can unmute yourself because Spencer will be doing a lot of the talk. Well, Spencer could unmute himself if he was there, but he's not out. Okay, so, there he is. He popped up. Unmute yourself, Mr. Grendel. We will prepare to get started. Also, let's see, next month, March 14th will be our meeting. It's the March Valentine's Day meeting, whatever that day would be. It's the day before the Ides of March. Next month, we're going to be talking about midpoints. And if you don't know anything about them, you'll learn a little bit about them today when we talk about some of the charts. But you'll find out a lot more about them next month, and I'll be sending some information out about them before then. In April 11th, we have a Vedic astrologer who will be doing a presentation on some of the basic ideas of Vedic astrology and how it differs from Western astrology. May, we're going to be talking about the moon. It's Mother's Day. We'll be meeting on Mother's Day, and we'll be talking about the moon, appropriately enough. June, we're talking about containment. What is containment? Well, it's like the middle in a stellium. It's when a point has planets on, or other, planets on either side of it. So if you have a stellium in your chart, the one in the middle is contained between the two on the outside. Now, if you've got a 4-planet stellium, then you have the first one. The second one is contained between the first and the third is contained between the second and the fourth. We'll figure all that out.
It also works great on stelliums, because in stelliums there's a lot of compact aspects, and some of the middle of the stellium aren't getting the same effect as those on the outside. So it's kind of interesting in looking at that kind of thing too. Stellium could start with 3, so anything 3 on could work within a stellium too.
Go back over here. Okay. I don't see anybody else popping up in the let me in window yet. So I am going to start the slideshow. Share screen. Share screen. Here we go. Share. Okay. Well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. So we're going to be talking about love, romance, partnership, synastry, as we call it in astrology. Remember the old, what was it? Love is lovelier the second time around. That was a song, but some might question whether it actually is. What are your thoughts, Mr. Grendel?
Well, I think what we're studying here is the way people can relate to each other due to their inner vibration and into the kind of an aspect almost of the soul, where we find out those things that click in them vibrationally within their own chart, and then we look at what's going on. And when you bring these two vibrations together and how much harmony there is in this kind of mutual stuff. And it's also tricky because when we do just chart analysis, we have to be sure to flip the charts to get a view of each of them when related to each other, with one being the core. So it's an interesting thing that we're doing here, I think. Love is greater the second time around. And we're going to be looking at that too, with some interesting situations, I think. And it's going to be a great thing we're going to do here, because there's a lot of stuff to learn and to look at. And it's pretty encyclopedic in a way. It's very, we're going to have to cut it down a little bit, but this is going to be a good day.
So what is love? Merriam-Webster, in their wonderful dictionary, defines it as a strong affection for another arising out of kinship or personal ties, which makes one wonder whether or not there could be such a thing as love at first sight, but I, for one, believe there is. Interesting, the ancient Greeks had 5 types of love, so they had different words for the different types of love. Eros, which is the erotic love of beauty, sexual passion. Philia, which is the friendly love between equals or sibling love even. And then there's the storge, the parent-child love relationship. Philosia, self-love, which can be positive or negative. Positive is, you got to love yourself before you can love others. But you go too far, narcissism, vanity, and one can become a problem. Agape, the unconditional love, patience, forgiveness, charitable love, understanding and acceptance of others' differences. Something that seems to be lacking in our country today. And then many cultures have different words to mean different kinds of love. And I don't know, unlike English, which seems to have one word which encompasses everything, which one can wonder about sometimes, I guess. What do you mean when you say you love me? Synastry, from the Latin synastria, the favorable conjunction of the stars. In astrology, synastry includes several techniques for comparing and evaluating the different charts for 2 or more people to assess their connections and potential compatibility. Natal charts, the bi-wheel, where you place one natal chart inside the other, which then allows you to, then you swap the 2 so that the other chart's on the inside. Dual wheels, where you can actually look at the 2 charts side by side. The composite, which is actually a midpoint chart created for 2 or more people. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this, and we will cover it in great detail next month. The Davidson Chart, which is something of a more recent creation, which actually is based on, it creates a natal chart based on the midpoint of the birth time and place for the 2 individuals. What's really nice about that is it allows you to progress that chart. It's an interesting tool. And well, the heck am I doing here? All right, I've got people. Have I got anybody? Okay, pardon me while I'm trying to figure out if I've got people in the waiting room or not here. Okay, we're good. I guess we're good. So the Davidson chart, like I say, is the advantage of the Davidson chart over the composite is that since the Davidson chart is based on a physical time and place, you can do progressions with it, you can do solar arcs with it, you can do all those things with it that you can't do with a composite chart. Because a composite chart has no point in time and space to start from. Your thoughts, Mr. Grendel?
Well, I think that's an interesting. I've had a little problem here. I've lost you on my screen. Now I just see a big picture of you. Is there some way I can get out of this quickly? I don't know what happened here.
Good question. Look in the upper right-hand corner. Is there like something up there you can click on maybe?
Okay, I clicked on this. Yeah, now the question is what?
What are your thoughts on the different charts, Composite, Davidson.
Well, I have really a lot of pictures. You know, I like to use a lot of them. My favorite, and I think the one that's best, is where you use the two bi-wheel charts, comparing the two natal charts, kind of imposed upon each other. That's my favorite one, because I think that gives you the closest way of seeing how the energies actually interact. I think the composite is a good second source, because I find that it can be very interesting, and also it uses the midpoints of where each of the ascendants midpoint, you know, Venus's midpoints, and some Mars, and so that does give you some idea of how the chart molds together, like it is bringing the two charts together into one chart, and so I like that. Dual wheels is good, but I think you get a lot more if you have a computer that will do a program that will do the natal charts, and in terms of, you know, looking at the two natal charts together in a bi-wheel. I think that's my favorite. I find it's very interesting. The Davidson chart I find to be very interesting, because it gives you such a different way of looking at it. Imagine taking the two midpoint birthplaces. So if someone's born at birth time here and a birth time here, let's say you're born in Texas and someone else is born in LA, then that would make your point of nativity in this chart like somewhere in New Mexico. And the surprising thing about the Davidson chart is, even though I think it's silly and ridiculous and could never work, it somehow seems to work from time to time with a kind of a surprising. It's like the tarot cards or something. How can something happen like that, and yet it seems true? And this is like with the Davidson chart. If you have it on your computer, like, and I know that Solar Fire does, I would really take it together. I seldom look at progressed natals, unless it's we're getting really, because by the time you do the others, you get the progressed natal, you're really into over an hour consultation, let me tell you. And so that's something I haven't paid a lot of attention to. And if you guys would want to talk more about how you use progressed natal charts in terms of compatibility, I'd like to hear about it, because I don't use it very much. That's the end of my little speech.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. All right, let's see, where are we at here? Okay, so let's talk a little bit of the basic laws of electromagnetism. That is, basic concept, you're familiar with magnets. Like poles repel, opposite poles attract. If you carry that concept into astrology, that would be the same as saying, well, you know, same sun conjunct sun is not a good relationship combination, or even people that have two people with the same sun sign, that relationship probably may not work because of that polarity, where they're both south poles or north poles, however you want to look at it, and the same tends to repel rather than attract. And that would then conversely say that, but opposites would attract. So you would think then that you would be more attracted to someone whose sun sign is the opposite of yours, or where there's a sun opposite opposing sun. Astrology isn't quite as cut and dried as the electromagnetic world. And so there are strengths and weaknesses in both conjunctions and oppositions. So I figured, well, I'm a good example of that. I mean, my first wife was a Virgo. She was born 2 years and 4 days after me. So our sons were conjunct, and it worked for 17 years. We had 2 daughters. My current wife is a Pisces. So by signs we're opposite, but she's a late Pisces and I'm an earlier Virgo. So our sons are not opposite each other. We've been married 33 and a half years now. That works pretty well for me. But yeah, and the idea that there's certain signs that we do or don't get along with, I don't really buy into that. I mean, not in terms of sign to sign. you know, when I think about, you know, the people that I've been attracted to throughout my life, um, you know, my father was an Aquarius, my mother was a Gemini, my grandmother, I had a grandmother who was an Aquarius and a grandfather that was a Capricorn. A brother that was, two older brothers, one was a Libra and one was a Cancer. Yeah, it's, the daughters are a Taurus and a Scorpio. And I don't espouse the idea that, oh, if you're this sign, you won't, you know, that sign is not going to be good for you.
Well, I
Uh,
agree with that. But I also think that a whole idea of likes repel, just the sun signs is such a shallow way of looking things. It's kind of like skimming something just to, you know, you look at a book by a cover, then you find inside that you have polarized Mars, or your Venus is in the wrong place with their Uranus. No wonder you're neurotic together, or your moons are together and you have such good emotional meshing together despite what may be going on with the suns. Or you have something else going on, your Jupiter's trine, so there's a lot of expansive energy that you like to use. So I really don't use a lot of, you know, when you're talking to people, you know, at a cocktail, we don't have parties anymore, unfortunately, except
no,
here. But if you're talking to people, you know, socially, it's a good icebreaker to start in on, well, what your sign is and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody will have to come up and tell you, well, you know, I'm a Virgo, she's a Pisces. What does that mean? And you have to have that backup of, well, you know, there's other things in the chart besides just the sun. With my own wife, we have a lot of trines involved with it. And, you know, her moon trines my sun. So that's kind of a big pickup for me. So there are a lot of different things that, and I like the way her Saturn works with my sun chart, with my sun sign, in terms that they're within, you know, 4 degrees of orb. So there are a lot of things to think about. And if you're an astrologer talking to people who are critical of sun sign astrology, point out that they're not really getting the whole picture with sun sign astrology. Okay, that's my ram on that.
where are we at? Oh, there we are. Here we go. Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, and to pick up from there, you know, you look for, yeah, you can't base it on one factor. Because we all know there's 12 houses, 12 signs, 10 major planets, and then you've got all the nodes and a lot of other factors that can come into play.
Jim, can I add one?
Conjunctions in synastry could represent shared views, wants, desires, common goals. Oppositions and squares, they might represent some tension points for attraction, but that's where the passion might come from, and what you miss about the other person when you're not together. The trine that Spencer was talking about, I see that as like a sense of ease with the other, but at the same time, there may be if you don't have the, you know, little square opposition or something else here to add that bit of fire to it, it may feel as if there might be something missing. With sextiles, there's an ease. There may also be an occasional sense of some feeling of an uncomfortable feeling that, and there can be that hidden glue that may trap you in a sense that you might find yourself at times feeling trapped or confined or constricted within the relationship. And the quintile, well, that wasn't what I meant. Okay. Yeah, I
Jim,
meant
can you hear
quincunx.
me?
Yes,
Jim? Oh, you can?
yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing. The strongest
Yes.
relationship, which I think we did last year or the year before,
Mhm.
his moon is Virgo and her ascendant is Virgo. And he has a Sag ascendant and she's a Sag. So her sun is on Sag. And that just seemed to make the greatest couple.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is that you don't look just for connections between the two common points, like sun to sun or Venus to Venus or moon to moon. You look at connections between those points and other points within each other's chart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did, instead of quintile, I meant quincunx, and I just noticed that.
Yeah.
which is that little irritant that may become a big issues. And then you have your various minor aspects, which can help to add fire and spark and can bring up other issues. Where are we at? Okay. Some ideas on points, like sun in the same element. You may find that, I find that it seems like, if I'm an earth sign, and so I do tend to gravitate toward other earthy people. I gravitate, I have moon in Sagittarius, which is a fire moon, and I kind of gravitate that way. My ascendant is Sagittarius. I'm a Sag Gemini. And so that can also sometimes, there can be connections with the ascendant to the ascendant or the opposite. We have an example of the opposites. Nodal conjunctions, same planet conjunctions, or other aspects. Any aspects between two planets creates a connection, a line of spark, electricity, communication. You look for Venus-Mars aspects, planet to the midpoint, conjunct to midpoints. That is a conjunction. So if you find, for example, if you do a midpoint chart, composite chart, and then you place someone's, and then you take one of the people and you place their natal chart around the outside, and you may see that a point where that connects with one of the midpoints. Now, that can make, that can have an effect on things. Look at the named asteroids. If you really want to get into this, start drilling down deeper. Astro.com is a great source. Got all the named asteroids. Even if you don't use it regularly, you can, it's a free, set up a free account and go in there, find the named asteroid. So if you're with somebody, look to see if there's an asteroid that's got your name and an asteroid with their name, and then look to see where those asteroids show up in each other's chart. And you look to add for connections to the angles. And okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think Spencer talked about this a bit, but the idea is, my approach, and I think most approach, you look at each natal chart separately because you want to have some sense of how each person is going to approach relationships. And you look to the 7th house and what's in their 7th house. You can look at the dual wheels. You can compare the two charts side by side, or you do the bi-wheel with one on the inside and one on the outside, and you switch and see how they connect. With the composite, you create a composite chart. You look at the composite chart, but then you can also do a bi-wheel where you take the composite on the inside and you put their natal chart on the outside. Create the Davidson chart. You can do a bi-wheel with the Davidson chart for each individual. And then if you want to really start digging down in this rabbit hole, you can progress their natal charts and you can progress the Davidson chart to the time of their first meeting, or the proposal, or the wedding, or some other significant date in the relationship. And you can look at where each person was as part of that relationship. And you can do it, you can actually, if you have a date and time and place where they first met, you could erect a natal chart for that point in time and progress that as you, burrow down the rabbit hole.
Can I put in
Yes,
an advertisement for my
please
book?
do.
Because I'll tell you one thing I found is very important. If you understand the temperaments between the two people, you can see where some areas they would have conflict. For instance, you've got a very active guy who's very sports minded and so on, and he has somebody who has very low activity level who just likes to play board games or watch TV. There's going to be a conflict because people don't understand that temperaments are there at birth and you can't really change them. You have to understand you can't change that other person. That's the way they are.
Mhm.
Anyway, I found this very, very helpful when you're doing counseling work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like you look at somebody's baby picture, that won't be the same as them as an adult, but that's still them. You know, it's like with a natal chart. The natal chart, you can't change the natal chart.
Can
You
I
can't
ask?
change where things are. You cannot change somebody's genetic inherent nature, but we all change and evolve and grow as we age and move through life's experiences. So, but like you say, that temperament, there's certain basic things that don't change. They're always going to be there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You were saying that by taking the date, time, and place that two people meet, you can, what is it that you can tell that from that?
Well, what it gives you is it's a natal chart for the relationship.
Mhm.
In
So it'll,
essence.
Mhm. Go ahead.
And so look at that chart and see what it tells you, and compare that chart with the charts of the two individuals.
In other words, that's going to be the character of their relationship.
It's going to have an underlying character. Yeah, you only get to make a first impression, one first impression. Right.
Right.
And the nice thing you see is if you've got that kind of information and they're several years into the relationship, you can progress that chart along with their chart if you want to see how things have changed for them.
Mhm. And is there a way to use the charts or astrology as a way of, I guess I'll say maybe therapy, or, you know, how to, let's say if a couple is having difficulty at some point, to
Mhm.
use that in a way to help them in a relationship?
Would be the idea, yes. If you're going to, you would look at using their natal charts and what information you can glean from them when they first met, any other ideas, whatever else they might have, any important dates. We're going to be talking at some point about wedding charts, because a wedding chart can also be important in terms of an indication of, how successful or whether or not the marriage will last a long time or not. It's like anything else. You always want to pick a good chart for whatever you decide to do on any major things. But yeah, the idea would be you look at the whole picture of things so you can get a better sense of where each person is.
Mhm. Okay.
One of the charts we're going to look at is
Mhm.
going to be the chart, a biwheel of the couple with the Guinness World Record for the longest marriage. I think that's probably coming up next.
Yeah, let's see that now.
All right, so we got the here's some of the charts we're going to be looking at. Guinness World Record for longest marriage. Famous people with multiple marriages, Larry King and Elizabeth Taylor, both of whom were married 8 times, but married only to 7 different people because they married the same one twice. We'll be looking at Queen Elizabeth and Queen Consort Prince Phillip, the great royal love triangle of Charles, Camilla, and Diana. We've got Tom Hanks, Samantha Luz, and Rita Wilson triangle. We got Will and Kate, Harry and Meghan, and somebody had asked about Donald and Melania, so I've thrown in the bonus charts for the Donald's 3 weddings, Ivana, Marla, and Melania, which even if we don't get to them, you'll get them in the slideshow. So here we go. All right, so here it is. Herbert Fisher and Zelmira George. This is their biwheel. Herbert's on the inside, Zelmira's on the outside. Now, let me set this up a little bit. Okay, we're showing 12 p.m. for birth time for both of them because we don't know when they were born. So you really can't rely on the house placements or which, the rising sign or any of the signs on the angles or any of that, because we don't know that. What we do know is that during the course of the day, the moon is only going to, it's going to be the major factor in terms of movement. For example, if we look over here in the 6th house, where the big red circle is, and thank you, my artwork isn't the greatest, but we see Zelmira's moon at 29 Aquarius 33. So if she was born afternoon, in the afternoon or evening, she could have a Pisces moon, because the moon would move anywhere from, the moon moves just under 12 degrees to over 15 degrees a day, which, so with a noon chart, you can split that difference 6 degrees one way or the other. So she could be a Pisces moon. But in which case, it's, unless she was born earlier, which would move her moon back into Aquarius a little bit more. You can figure she's got moon conjunct Herbert's Saturn and his south node in the 6th house. But notice Herbert's a Gemini, sun at 19 Gemini up here in the 10th house, while Zelmira is a Sagittarius with her sun opposite down in the 3rd house on the IC. So here's a good example of opposites attracting. Their marriage lasted 86 years, 290 days. It ended when Herbert died. Now I would do, okay, so any questions, comments, thoughts on Herbert and Zelmira?
Yeah, I can see that. They have Saturn moon conjunctions from both Joe's charts. One's a conjunction, the other one's an opposition.
Yeah. Yeah, because
so Saturn would make it long lasting, wouldn't it?
Yes, Saturn would make it long lasting.
Can you just, I just have a question. Can you just explain what conjunction means again?
Oh, the conjunction is when they're close together.
Okay.
2 points close together.
Okay, so like what you're going over with your mouse there. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
if you go up, if you look up here, you'll see his sun at 19 Gemini, and he had Pluto at 21 Gemini. So there's another conjunction here. And when you look down here in the 4th house, in what is Zelmira's, we see Venus at 9 Capricorn, Uranus at 11, and her south node at 14. So here we would have, this would be a stellium, because all 3 of them, they're very close to each other.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
Point out the fact that, now who's on the outside?
Zelmira.
Okay, well, her Mars connects with the Neptune in a trine formation.
Right.
Which I think is very significant in that they're both in water signs, and the Neptune is in Cancer, which is, of course, has a domestic and maternal aspects to it. And I think also that they have a very strong, I think they're kind of creative and playful with each other with that Uranus. It's a wide conjunction, but with the wide of Venus and the conjunction there in the 4th house, I think that, of course, that's the problem with these. I'm just going to start talking away about the 4th house, and we don't know which house these really are in. But we can see that no matter what house anything is in, we have that 7-inch 7 orb conjunction, and I think that's highly significant. Also, we have a Jupiter trine the moon here in that. Oh, I guess this one chart. I'm sorry, I still forget that.
Yeah. So here's, yeah. So this box over here shows the closest aspects between the 2 charts. This column, the left column, represents her planets or points. Central column is, of course, the symbol for the aspect. And on the right, then you have his points. So like this first one shows that her Saturn is squaring his Pluto with a 14-minute orb, which is very tight. It's like just under 1/4 of a degree. And then her Saturn opposing his moon with a 20-minute or 1/3 of a degree. Again, very tight.
I wonder if they had an open marriage.
I don't know. They did have a couple of kids, and they have some grandkids, and interesting. She died like 2 years after he did. They both died at 105.
Wow.
Change.
Wow.
Okay. Who's up next? Oh, this is their. I hope I'm in the right chart here. Yes, here we go. So this is their wedding chart. They got married May 13th, 1924. Again, I just kind of guesstimated a time. I picked 5 p.m., figuring, okay, it's going to be probably later in the day so they can, you know, in maybe afternoon, have whatever. So you can't really rely on the house placement or any of that. But again, everything is going to be pretty much in terms of zodiacal placement is going to be where it's at. So they are the Guinness World Record for the longest verified marriage, 86 years, 290 days. Lasted until Herbert died at the age of 105 on February 27th in 2011. So Myra died 2 years later, February 20th, 2013, also at the age of 105. So I would say that you got a pretty tight. Over here, Moon applying to a waxing trine to the Sun. One of the rules in picking a marriage chart is you want a waxing moon, not a waning moon. Waxing moon goes from new to full. The waning moon goes from full to new. And okay. I love Mercury retrograde because I'm a Virgo and Mercury is my ruling planet. But it's at 0 Virgo, and so I have fun with it. Okay, so you see that we have the Sun was at around 22, 23 of Taurus. The Moon was at about 14 or 15 of Virgo, give or take a few degrees one way or the other, depending upon time of day. And the Moon is moving towards what would be, you know, they're both in Earth signs. An earthy connection like that gives good grounding and certainly implies a longer lasting relationship. Okay. Now here we have Elizabeth Taylor. We see that she's a Gemini on the descendant. Classic, typical rule for a Gemini on the 7th house cusp, probably have more than one married. I've got Gemini on the 7th. I've been married twice. Or more than one significant relationship. She has a nice Uranus-Venus conjunction in 5th house. Pretty tight, 5 minutes of arc apart. Married 8 times with 7 husbands. Married Richard Burton twice. One can speculate that if Michael Todd had not been killed in a plane crash, he might not have had so many subsequent marriages. But I think he was already her 3rd. Yeah. He was our 3rd or 4th. So what do we see in terms of some indication as to why she got married so often or so many times?
Well, I think that Venus conjunct Uranus is liable to be attracted many times suddenly. Then it's in Aries.
Yeah.
And it trines Jupiter.
And the Mars that rules that is in Pisces. And, which another thing is that the idea there would be that it would have all that Piscean energy of either seeing things in some kind of highly dramatic sense or also in a compulsive sense. They might be someone they're compulsively have to be because they feel some kind of Piscean dream of what someone should be like. And they're very close together. And the Sun and the Mercury, that's practically a Gozimi, isn't it? Is that a Gozimi?
Yeah, that would be Kazemi.
Explain that
Those
to
are
me,
10
Jim.
minutes of arc.
It has to be within a degree. That's a very significant sign because that's where it's beyond not being in the shadow anymore. You're kind of like in the cauldron of the Sun, and it makes for a lot of very strong and unusual characters. Very strong. You don't see that very often when you're doing private readings either.
No.
Just way too, so that in another sense, that Kazemi opposing her Neptune, she's really entranced by a lot of I think a part of her career position there is to deal in terms of dramatic energy. And also I think people get stuck out on these locations and things like that. And there's a whole effort or time for her to have time to get involved with people or develop, fantasies about what kind of a person they would relate to. There's a lot of talk about what goes on the set, and often like with Burton, there were two stars who fell in love with each other and they were doing this incredible, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And it was a passionate experience and relationship. So I don't know, I think Neptune's a very big problem for her as well as the Uranus.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say like the Venus conjunct Uranus. I think that would suggest kind of like needing some independence in relationships a little bit too, and kind of wanting some freedom in that respect in relationships.
Anybody want to comment on the Moon Chiron opposition?
It's pretty wide. You could say she was wounded at work because she started out so young to be an actress and was involved in that whole, I think it was MGM, that, that whole thing of being a child actress and growing up soon, and yet it's a wounding kind of experience.
Yes. Under the old studio system. She did injure her back shooting, was it National Velvet, I think it was, which became a problem for her throughout her life. Moon representing the feminine women. If we think of Chiron in his various manifestations as the wounded, the healer, the teacher, the student, the abandonment issues and self-sacrifice, there's a underlying psyche issues there. I think she got married when their first marriage was at 18 to, what was it, Conrad Hilton Jr., which didn't last very long. And then she had another one that didn't last very long. So yeah, there was an underlying issue there involving relationships in terms of really understanding and appreciating herself, I think, or loving herself, and what she wanted or expected from a relationship.
What about the Moon trine Pluto, and the Moon's in the 12th house, trine Pluto in the 8th? What would you?
Right.
That's kind of intense.
I think that's real important because they're in mutual reception.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it gives her charisma, that dark kind of charisma she had. That's the 12th house, 8th house situation where she played a prostitute and got an Academy Award for it. So she played the role very well.
One of her husbands died, remember, in an airplane crash?
Todd.
Yeah, that was Michael Todd.
Yeah, I think she said that she really loved him, or I think I heard that she I don't know if that's true, but that she would have stayed with him or something like that at one point. I remember
There was-
reading an
there was-
article about that.
You know, I think it's probably correct. There was quite an age difference between her and him.
Don't we have their chart?
We don't have Michael Todd. I didn't pull his in for this. He was like about 20 years older than her.
But she needed
and
somebody
it was
older.
and it was right after. And here's the interesting thing: is that right after, at the time, so she was married to Michael Todd. Debbie Reynolds is married to Eddie Fisher, and they're good friends, and they socialize a lot together. So when Michael Todd is killed in a plane crash, Eddie and Debbie are there for Elizabeth. And it's during that phase when, you know, she falls in love with Eddie Fisher and they begin their affair, and Eddie divorces Debbie, ending that Hollywood fairy tale, oh, the wonderful marriage, and marries Elizabeth, which lasts then until she meets Richard Burton while filming Cleopatra. And so underlying all of, there's a need, she has this need for love and support from someone, and typically more probably the masculine side of things, because, you know, you look, you've got Saturn at 0 Aquarius in the second, you've got Mars conjunct Sun in Pisces in the third, conjunct the IC. And so, yeah.
What do you think of the fact her Saturn is unaspected until you get down to Chiron, which is squared? No, not Chiron. I guess you have to go down to the nodal structure and the.
Yeah, so it's trining her midheaven.
Yeah.
Jim,
And I'm trying
oh.
to what MC, what is that?
Jim, this is Rita.
Yeah.
This need for these men, the father, it also could be the need for the mother. It's just shown in a man. And where would we find that? Because we know her early childhood was ruled by the studios. So she really didn't have a supportive early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Is that also shown between her mother and father in the chart?
Well, that would be represented by the moon and at 15 Scorpio and the sun at 7 Pisces, which is a wide trine. But when you got the two luminaries, what you have there is the moon, 12th house moon, of course, is somewhat hidden. It's separating from that waning trine to the sun, which can symbolize either a relationship that is, from a relationship standpoint, it could symbolize a relationship that is either ending or at least is not as strong anymore. Whether the two actually separate or not is not, can't be determined, but the fact is there seems to be a significant disconnecting between the father and the mother symbols.
Hey, James.
The moon in the 12th house. So that's my moon is in my 12th house, and there's a whole bunch of mother issues. Is there
That's
just
right.
general mother issues in the moon's in the 12th house?
Usually.
I can say something
Yeah.
about that, please, about the moon. The moon and Pluto are so tied together. You have to think of the moon in Scorpio, that this mother was very controlling. And from what I understand, I heard one man talk about her. He said she was so helpless that everything was done for her. He said she didn't even have enough sense to put on a raincoat when it was raining. Somebody had to tell her, put on your raincoat. And that's why she liked these strong men. I remember seeing her in a restaurant once with Mike Todd, and he just bowled his way through the crowd and dragged her behind him. You know, it was just, it was so interesting to see their relationship that way. But I think that all of that control by her mother made her feel suffocated at the same time. So because she's got a Venus in Aries, but it's conjunct to Uranus. What she wanted was some freedom from that mother influence, and I'm sure that
yeah.
strong men,
Yeah. Well, that would.
And the Pluto squaring like the Venus Uranus
right,
too in the 5th.
exactly.
which
But
also-
the main thing, the Jupiter at 10 degrees squares her moon and her Venus, which says dependency was created early in her life.
Jim, I wanted to jump in too, because you asked early on. I love Cornelia's comments, by the way. And I don't know much about her early, Elizabeth Taylor's early childhood and life, but I was very keyed into that moon. You asked early on about that moon Chiron opposition, and I immediately wanted to know what was her experience with her mother like, especially in the 12th house. And that was really significant. But I want to respond to both your and Spencer's comments that her behaviors were problems. And I think her behaviors were attempts at having solutions and trying to find the support that was not available during that childhood, as Cornelia articulated really beautifully.
Yeah. I would say that the behavior, which was looking for an answer, a solution, a way out, unfortunately became part of the problem because of the nature of the behavior. But yes, it's when you start going through the web, it's hard to separate, which came first, or which led to which. Did the behavior lead to the problem, or the problem caused the behavior? Because they end up being closely intertwined, because one is an attempt to solve the other or escape from the other.
Well, I think that moon Pluto being in rulers, they're in mutual reception.
Yeah.
To me, that's a problem right there. Because you've got the mother in this Scorpio sign, which is overwhelming usually to a child. I bet her mother was a stage mother. I mean, she started out, she couldn't have gone into acting without her mother pushing her.
Wow.
Yeah.
And her mother wanted control over her, and the only way she could break the control with her mother is to marry somebody stronger.
All right, we've got to get moving here, because otherwise we're not even going to get anywhere near where we want to go. So thank you, everybody. Moving along. Next up, Larry King.
How many times was he married?
He was married 8 times, 7 wives. He married one woman twice. Had to make sure that it wouldn't work. So yeah, divorced her twice. So
didn't Mickey Rooney have a lot of marriages too?
he did.
But the first thing we see about him is that he got that Uranus square the Venus, and when I see Uranus square the Venus, I think that there's a love of creativity and new things, and I think that he might, as he goes along and that Uranus kicks in, he might find himself getting bored with one and then having to jump to another to fulfill some kind of I would say almost neurotic need for new women and new creativity and change in his love life. What do you think?
Well, I think Venus and Uranus needs freedom. So when they get into a relationship, they tend to start feeling suffocated.
Yes, I think there's a neurotic need for that. Because you
get bored quickly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Especially like with the hard aspect, like it being like Venus square Uranus too.
And the moon in Sagittarius would need a lot of freedom too.
Yeah.
What do you think about the trine to Pluto in the 7th with the Sun Mercury? It seems to me
that gave him so much talent.
But if you have Pluto in the 7th house, it seems to me like that would be also a need to have kind of transformational experiences or into relationships where something needs to change and it doesn't. And so
Right.
catastrophe happens.
He's looking for something.
Exactly.
How about
And the one more thing though, the Venus does trine the Neptune, which gives him in the 8th, which so he has a square to Uranus, Venus, and the Venus goes to the Neptune. So it becomes this need, like she said, Cornelia said, she feels he feels suffocated, and then the Neptune gives a release for all that tension, and it's a pretty tight. It's a degree and a half of orb, so that's really a tight in the 8th house. Ruled by that Mercury that's over there with the sun near Casimir.
Would he have difficulty with Venus in the Capricorn expressing himself or not, do you think?
I don't think he trusts relationships.
Yeah,
I think he
but
feels, I think that he feels suffocated by relationships because he's a Scorpio. He wants all that control himself.
Well, not only that, he's horny, and I think that this whole Venus thing has set up a kind of a need for him to actually get involved. I mean, I don't know if he's wounded or he's just a hungry man. I mean, I guess you could say both ways, but it seems that he spoke on TV about once that love was always something that saved him. And I thought it was very interesting. He used the word saved. He's been married all these times. I guess he got saved several times.
Well,
Sounds
I
like something that
find
needed
that
to be saved a lot.
with the
Okay.
Uranus in the 4th is part of the early nurturing. It's hit and miss. It's kind of like you learn not to attach
yeah.
because Uranus is inconsistent. It means mom wasn't always there
And there
when
could be
he needed
anger.
her.
There could be anger in that because the Uranus is ruled by Mars in the 12th, conjunct the moon.
Right.
Yeah. And how about the Venus square Jupiter aspect I'm kind of seeing here with his Jupiter and Libra and Venus?
Well, that makes a T-square to the moon.
Any thoughts about that? Yeah, Venus square
That makes a nice
Jupiter. It's a really nice square.
That's a dependency one.
Mm-hmm. And it's a first quarter crisis of action square. So
He started really early. I don't know how old he is when he did Midsummer Night's Dream, but he was only a child doing Shakespeare. It was incredible.
What would you say about the moon aspecting the nodes?
trine sextile, yeah.
This is the third chart you've shown the moon in the 12th house.
Yeah. Well, maybe we like them that way. I wonder why.
I think because the mother plays a background scene. Yeah. I mean, a child actor has to have a mother pushing them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he started really, really young.
He brought in Leo energy.
If you look at the table in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that his moon is at minus 27 degrees, 37 minutes. That means it's out of bounds south by more than 4 degrees. But notice also that Venus and Mars are similarly highlighted, both out of bounds south. So, 3 of the planets that we would probably associate most with love and relationships, Moon, Venus, and Mars, are all out of bounds and out of bounds south. So this can...
James, what does out of bounds mean?
It means it's gone beyond the boundaries of the sun. The sun goes to 23 degrees, 26 minutes above the equator and below the equator. So that's your summer solstice and winter solstice. So the sun is always highest on summer solstice. That's as high as it gets in the sky. And when a planet goes beyond that point, it's considered out of bounds. Now, if it goes beyond the sun's the summer solstice limit, would out of bounds north. If it goes beyond the sun's winter solstice limit, then it's out of bounds south. And if we apply some of the analogies of nodes to north and south, when it's out of bounds, a planet basically it's like a dog in the dog park off its leash. It can run free. It doesn't have to follow all the rules. It may or may not respond when you call it. So that sense of freedom. With the South, we think of the South as representing more about the past, the skills, things that we bring with us, but it's also about the things we need to eliminate. But the South can also be a gateway for things that we bring in that are unexpected. Okay. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. So as we go through life, we do things, we try to bring things in that are positive and good for us, but sometimes our actions may have other results or consequences that we didn't want. And so those things are the things that kind of come in through the South Node. So yeah, with those three planets out of bounds south, it gives me the idea that, you know, he's dealing with some past issues. Obviously, I would say, you know, some early childhood things because of the way he was pushed by the mother, moon in the 12th. And so he's dealing with those things as he goes through life and has difficulty dealing with them because his behavior does not fall within the norm. And so he marries someone or gets involved with someone and they're expecting certain type of behavior and reaction to things within the relationship. And his mode of approach is different. It's outside the norm. And as such, things just don't last. He's looking for something that is more than what he's getting. And so he's not happy. They're looking for something that is less than or different from what he's giving. And so it doesn't last that way either. So they ends up, you know, they get some money and he moves on to the next one.
Next.
Hey, any more thoughts? We move on to the next chart here. We got oops. So here's, this is a bi-wheel for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. They've been married, they got married in 47, so they've been married 74 years. They do have a long way to go to reach the record, but they're still doing pretty good. I think one key indicator for the longevity there is you look at the 7th, 8th house where you see her Neptune is conjunct his moon, and we have his Neptune conjunct her moon. And those are both fairly tight conjunctions. Philip had a royal title, but he was basically pretty much penniless. He wasn't a popular choice for her, but she loved the tall, handsome men in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's worked out for them.
Well, you know, they put up, if you've watched The Crown or any of that stuff, he was quite a playboy initially, and she forgave him a lot of things, and eventually he came to conform to the real habit of being, you know, the Queen's consort, as you put out. But you know, if you watched it, he got involved in a couple of situations where on a cruise they went to a place out away from Tahiti and they stopped and they had a big fling, and someone wrote a letter about it back to a friend who then got it into the hands of the press. And that caused such a problem. And it was really practically a whole chapter. If you watch The Crown, you'll have seen that. That was really an interesting thing. And she just said, you know, we've got to just march through this. And they did. They just, it's kind of like when Clinton had to put up with Bill, in a way. Not as often. I don't think he was as bad as Bill, but I think still that there was at least another thing. But they're not without their own, his Mars trines her Mars, and Pluto and the Jupiter. So I think that and the Moon. So I think if you look at that trine that they had, that there was something that held them together. I mean, the Mars is conjunct the Sun, and they're both not without tempers, I would think. But on the other hand, it's bound together, and the Queen has her Mars and Jupiter in a fixed sign. So and his is in a mutable sign. So I think he's the one that had to eventually say, okay, we got to go with tradition. We have to go with the fact that we can't have divorces, that we have to see each other through this. And they did. That's what I think.
And his Pluto's on a Mercury, so I'm sure she dominated the relationship. Sorry.
Well, there's first of all, he's going to be 100 this year. On June 10th, he's going to be 100. Really?
Yeah.
There's a special on PBS about Prince Phillip, and it's amazing how much stuff he does and doesn't get credit for. He is actually, it's called like Prince Phillip, the Untitled King, that he does as much as a king would do. And the same was true of Victoria and Albert. Albert was like, he was always by her right hand side. So this, even though we see Prince Philip less, according to this PBS special, he's very strong and is like a king.
And I think, that the relationship for the two of them is working because, one, he's accepted his role as being the hand of the Queen, to turn a phrase from Game of Thrones. Yeah, obviously at his age, he's not doing what he did before, but still, he was very instrumental in supporting her. I mean, they were they were vacationing in Africa when she got word that her father was deathly ill. I think he actually died before she got back. So he was there for her through all of that, through the children, through the divorces and the all the tragedies and such. So yeah, they have a very strong connection. I've got their wedding chart later on in here too for you to look at. Moving along. Okay, here we go. Prince Charles, I believe is what we got here. Yes, Chucky, lucky Chucky. So we look at Charles. What's he going to be looking for in? That's how you start to look at an individual's chart, and they say, "Why can't I find love? I'm so bad at it." You look to see, what are the indications of what kind of a partner is he looking for? Well, he's Leo rising, fit for a king, certainly. But that puts Aquarius on the 7th house cusp. Certainly not a indication of a vivacious, beautiful, passionate female. If he's looking for someone more Aquarian in nature, someone who's intelligent and can sit down and carry a good, intelligent conversation, that's going to kind of eliminate, a lot of the female population. And we all pretty much know that somewhere in the course of events, he fell in love with Camilla Parker, and for whatever reason, couldn't marry her. She married somebody else. He married Lady Diana Spencer, who was only 19 at the time. And then, the rest is kind of history as we see how that went along.
They wanted a virgin for him.
Yes, he needed to be a virgin. I don't think Camilla comes from a high enough breeding background to have been considered as suitable for him at the time that he was looking to get married. And she's actually a few months older than him.
Do we have their chart together?
We do. We have. That's who's next. Here we have Diana. daughter of Lord Spencer. So she came from the right stock. We see that she has Sag rising and Gemini on the descendant. Here's an interesting thing. Charles is fixed fire and air. Diana is mutable fire and air. Now, how well does fixed and mutable mix together?
Not too
Fixed
well.
doesn't like to, won't, it's going to be resistant to bending and changing.
But that moon in Aquarius falls in his 7th house then, doesn't it? Because he has
It
Aquarius.
does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she had something that he needed, was looking for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have Camilla. She's, let's see, July of 47. So for 7 from 11 is 4. So she's like 16 months older than Chuck. But yeah,
That's interesting. All her major planets in that stellar are in his 12th house, aren't they?
Yeah, because she is also Leo rising Aquarius on the descendant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she has got that Moon, Venus, Mercury, Sun all in Cancer in her 12th house, which would also be his 12th house. So now here, I think in part is an example of how like ascendant-descendant axes can find attraction.
Yeah, especially since her sun is so close to the ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
When she wanted, seems to me she'd be a nurturing person.
Yeah. Well,
that's
with all that
probably
Cancer,
what he
one would
wanted.
certainly think so, yes.
And that's what he needed.
Yeah, and she was always there for him throughout her marriage, even before he got married. They, excuse me, carried on. They would walk, carry on. And, then after he married Diana, at some point there, as things were starting to heat up or wind down, depending upon how you want to look at the marriage between Diana and Charles. I remember her comment about, there's 3 of them.
I'll tell you what else. She has a Jupiter in the 4th house, which to me, in trining her Cancer planets, means she was pretty stable. I don't think Diana was very stable.
She wasn't certainly as, and I think some of that may have stemmed from her upbringing and her youthful naivete.
Mm-hmm.
She did certainly step into her own during her marriage and later on with the children and such.
I think
after
she
the
had her
divorce.
life hijacked. I don't know. We know what she would have been like. I mean, a 19-year-old woman walking into that castle, that palace, and all the intrigue that was already going on. I don't think she had a prayer going into that. I don't think it was a weakness in the personality as much as, when a fox gets its foot caught in a trap, it's caught in the trap. It doesn't have anything to do with the fox. It has to do with that trap. And I think that the palace was a trap for her. They really treated her poorly, and then her husband's involved with someone else. They just used her for virgins to make sure that the line went on guaranteed in line. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we got? Now here's a bi-wheel with Charles on the inside and Camilla on the outside. And we can see, their ascendants were only 2 degrees apart.
Wow. You have
we can
trining
see,
stelliums, Jesus.
Yeah. See how this piles up. Let's see.
Do we flip that, or is that the one we have?
Yeah. Yeah. You see Charles and Camilla? Everybody seen that? Yes. Okay, so one thing that I see is her fourth house Jupiter in fixed water Scorpio squares his first house Pluto in fixed fire Leo. Got fixed angles. So, you know, they're both determined and set in their ways, but their ways are quite similar. Is
Well, that Jupiter,
Mars is Mars at 20 Sag, trining her Mercury Sun. No, it's not trining. That's an inconjunct. Okay, never mind.
Mm-hmm.
20. There we go.
Look at
you
their
got Uranus
total
raising its
Chiron.
head right in there. Uranus is at 23 opposing his Mars, Jupiter. I think that she broke him out of all the kind of thing he had to go through being this prince who was always running around. Somehow he's able to be intimate with her and to share stories with her. And I think she was strong enough. You had a Saturn on both of their ascendants. There was a strength there when they were together that opened him up, because look at all that Scorpio. He's not going to be the person that confesses secrets very easily. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is all going to be, and yet that aspect of the Uranus opposing his Mars, I think that in a way she excited him in ways that other women didn't excite him, you know, and it was in the fifth house too. So this is an affair that went way over bounds here and came into something much more stable. I mean, they were able to actually bring a divorced woman who had been the third woman in someone's marriage into the castle, into the palace.
Yeah.
And she was able to take it.
Yeah. Considering what happened with his great uncle, King Edward, who was forced to abdicate because he wanted to marry a divorcee.
Right.
But yeah, you look, see that his sun at 22 Scorpio trines her sun at 23 Cancer. I mean, she's got 4 planets in Cancer. He has 4 points in Scorpio. Now, they have 2 in common, Mercury, and he has Mercury's sun in Scorpio. Here's her, let's see, his Mercury trines her moon. Yeah, there's, and let's see. Okay, so what do we do next? What shows up next? Here's
Let's see him with Diana. I think that's next.
yeah. Here's Chuck and Diana. So her sun falls in his 12th house. So like Camilla, she's got Mercury's sun in Cancer. Her Neptune conjuncts his Mercury here in the 4th house. His Mars is basically conjunct her ascendant, but it would be in her 1st house.
Well, there's the old, well, I don't have to say that. Is this her ascendant that we see here right on his Mars?
Yeah, it's her ascendant.
That's her ascendant on the Mars, which then is involved with his own Uranus. So that Uranus pops up not only on the Mars, but it affects her ascendant as well. So once again, we go back as this need for the different, for the unusual, and she kind of fit into that for a ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice their tightest aspect is Chiron creating a square to her nodes, creating an equivalent of a T-square. with her nodes. It nodes at 28 Leo Aquarius, and his Chiron's at 28 Scorpio. Excuse me. So when I see connections like this with Chiron, I'm seeing that there's some sort of a healing, teaching going on, but we don't want to forget the aspects of abandonment and self-sacrifice as well.
Well, if you look at the Saturn in Charles's chart, and you look at the Mars and Pluto in Diana's chart, his Saturn is controlling all that, and then being, Saturn and Pluto in that kind of a conjunction is very dangerous, I think, and can lead to depression and all kinds of problems, because the Saturn keeps trying to project some kind of control over some dynamic elements that get the Mars under control, but the Pluto is there as well. And I think that Pluto made her depressed, caused her to have all those problems trying to deal with the demands of the Saturn from the royal family, and particularly Charles.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. Here is the composite, midpoint composite for Charles and Diana. And a quick explanation. What a midpoint chart does is it takes, for example, the sun. Here we see the sun in the chart is at 16 Virgo. And if we go back and we look at Diana's sun at 9 Cancer and Charles is at 22 Scorpio, we look for the point that's halfway in between. So 60, we're basically dealing with a sextile to Virgo from both directions. And so that midpoint between those 2 points ends up being 16 Virgo. And it does that for each of individual points as well. Notice we end up with this very tight Mars-Neptune conjunction.
And notice that squares the Uranus nearly exactly.
Yeah, there we got that dang Uranus in there again.
They're freaking things up.
Yeah. Now, one way that I've heard people describe the difference between a composite chart and a Davidson chart is that the composite tends to be more of a spiritual, ethereal, above as above indicator, while the Davidson is so below. As above, so below. And so when we go next, here is their Davidson chart. What this does is it takes the date and time and place that each person was born, and it finds the midpoint between the date and time of birth for each individual and the midpoint between the two locations of where they were born, and creates a chart based upon that location and that date and time. So it's based on a physical position in space and a given moment in time. Notice, here we go. Libra, Aries, ascendant, descendant axis, 16 Virgo sun. What do we have here in the Davidson? We have the same axis, Libra, Aries, but now the sun moves over to 18 Pisces. Because we're now looking at a midpoint in time, not between the 2 points. And typically what you will see when you compare a composite chart for a couple with a Davidson chart for that same couple, you'll often see the sun in the opposite signs in the 2 charts. But you may also see the ascendant descendant axes don't really shift that much. Physical reality, yeah, grounded in Earth. Well, here's that 12th house moon again. Remember the famous news clip? They're doing an interview, and a reporter makes some comment about love, and asks Charles about love, and Charles' response was, "Well, it just depends on what love is or what love means," something to that effect, indicating that he really wasn't comfortable answering the question. Well, he is a Scorpio, but it kind of put him on the spot. So that there is that question of, did he love Diana or not? Well, I think he did, and certainly grew to love her more, but I don't know if he ever loved her as much as he loves Camilla.
Well, they've got that Uranus once again in the Davidson makes a very key point there. I think it's significant. And then I also think that the Mars squaring the Mercury from Taurus to Uranus, to Aquarius. First of all, it's ruled by the Uranus, and that would, if you have Mars square Mercury, you're going to have people use kind of coarse language at each other at times. I think it's an aspect that shows there's going to be some really strong disagreements on certain issues when you have that square that's fixed between Mars and Mercury.
You mean Venus? Mars, Venus. It's not squaring Mercury is at 21.
I thought Mercury is at 3.
No, that's the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it does make that square to Venus.
It does
5.
make the square to Venus in the same sense.
Yeah.
Never mind, but yes, look at it.
But yeah, but I mean, it's still, you have that fixed energy square where Mars is in Taurus, ruled by Venus, but Venus is in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, which is conjunct Jupiter up here in Cancer, and part of a grand water trine with Saturn and the Sun.
And then there's a Chiron right there next to the Venus, showing that all of the love problems here are wounding.
Yeah. 4th house, lots of wounds. I mean, Charles was brought up in a traditional royal household where, he was cared for by nannies in school, and there's not a lot of love necessarily. Storge, the Greek word for paternal parent-child love, he didn't experience it like Diana might have, or some others would experience in a normal household. Now here we see the composite midpoint for Charles and Camilla on the inside. And we have Diana's natal chart on the outside. So the inner wheel is based on Charles and Camilla. It has nothing to do with Diana at all. And so we look at Diana on the outside, and we look to see what's going on here. The conflict that she was feeling because of this underlying relationship of Charles and Camilla. And we can see it highlighted here in the 1st house, where her Uranus at 23 Leo is basically conjunct the composite Saturn at 22 Leo. And her North Node at 28 is on the composite Venus of 28. Uranus, kind of, if you would allow me, rears its ugly head again. It basically, there was never a chance that this relationship was going to last and be a happy, loving relationship, because she would have had to become someone she wasn't. And he was always going to have, this forever love for Camilla. How we doing, folks? People out there? Yo. Any other thoughts? So now here we're looking at just the composite for Charles and Camilla. They have a composite sun of 23 Virgo. Leo Aquarius axes, which they were both Leo Aquarius axes, so that was not unexpected. Here's their Davidson though. Again, the sun moves to Pisces, but they still have Leo Aquarius axes. And this puts the Pluto, Saturn, Mars all in the first house in Leo and all retrograde.
Hey, Jim, I can jump in if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought I'd chime in too. You made such an interesting comment about as if this was a normal household or a normal relationship. And the more I look at charts, especially in synastry of couples, whether it's the long-time marriage or the charts of kings and queens, I see that none of them are normal. They're also individual with also their challenges and blessings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
Yes.
That there's no normal in all of these individual charts.
No, and I guess when we talk about normal, I mean, it's like, well, what would be a normal chart? What a normal chart look like?
What I meant was normal relationship or normal marriage. And I think we looked at Elizabeth Taylor's and her relationships, and that may have been unnormal for her time, but she was setting a new precedent, certainly, and with the challenges of her life. And as we've seen the 20th century roll on, we've seen that a concept of normalcy in relationship and marriage completely dissolve.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was my point, that there's no normal now.
No, yeah, and I mean that, now we're dealing with a whole new world of new normals.
Yes, even as you began with your own relationship, that you had 2 successful marriages instead of one marriage failure and a divorce, actually 2 successful marriages, and how wonderful that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears, here's Tom Hanks and Samantha Luz. Now, I don't know how many of you realize that Tom Hanks was married before he married Rita Wilson, but Samantha was his first wife, mother of, I think, 2 of his children. Not a whole lot of information. She was also an actress, not quite 4 years older than him. But look, we see her Uranus sitting on his sun. So there's that Uranus again, and this time it's in his 10th house. Where you find Uranus, chances are you're going to find issues. You see that, where you see a Uranus connecting, one person's Uranus connecting to another person's whatever, the closer the connection, the more likelihood is that it can raise issues, simply because Uranus wants, needs, and behavior is different from pretty much any other point in the chart. So that's always something to key on. Now, you'll notice that Samantha also had a very tight Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which falls in Tom's 2nd house.
Well, I think one of the things that happened with that Uranus is that Uranus ended up, now, I want to make sure I have these things right because I screwed up. As far as I can see, we have a trine between his Mars and his Sun, and her Uranus is conjunct that sun. And so that energy between the trine would then be tickled, or kind of, there would be something about it initially that would be very interesting, I think, for him. That she might have represented some kind of, they were both in theater, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And so that would be another thing to think of. What amazes me about him, however, is that he's got that Uranus moon nearly in conjunction, and yet he has had such a long marriage to Wilson.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of
yeah, she's got, her sun is in a tight conjunction to his south node, or sorry, his north node. So there's, the sense, common goals, sense of purpose and future, because they were both striving actors. He went on to become very successful. She less so. He met Rita doing one of his movies while he was still married to Samantha. Whether or not they had an affair during that time, it ultimately led to his falling in love with Rita, divorcing Samantha, and then marrying Rita Wilson.
well, I have in that question, see what I see, that her Saturn is on his Neptune,
Mhm.
and her Saturn trined his Venus. We all see that. I have that right.
Yeah.
I think then that there might have been a situation in which her need for definition, and if you have someone has their Saturn on your Neptune, that is going to limit what you kind of expect you can do, I would think, at one level.
Yeah. But her Saturn is also conjunct her Neptune. So there is that the common shared dream. If you think of Neptune from the standpoint of dreams and goals, there's a shared connection there. And perhaps where Saturn was constricting hers to some extent, by being conjunct his Neptune allowed her to perhaps stretch the limits of that her Saturn Neptune conjunction. I don't know. What's next? Here's Tom and Rita. Well, darn, look at that. Moon, Uranus, 11th house combo. And then we have the Mars connection in the 6th house. Well, they're not that different in age. She's 3.5 months older than him is all, or younger than him is all. So you expect to see some of these connections showing up. Notice, 11th house, let's see, her moon is on his Uranus, and her Uranus is on his moon. So, we've got this moon Uranus connection, or big time 11th house. They are both, successful in the entertainment field. She's probably known a bit more for her singing than for her acting. He's known for his acting.
That their Mars are conjunct trining his sun.
Yeah.
So that I guess we could say there's got to be a very strong physical attraction here.
Yes, that as well. Her Pluto is on his Jupiter, 12th house. So we start to see a few more connections here. Let's see, his North node is conjunct her ascendant. His Saturn is conjunct her North node. They have a Chiron conjunction. Yeah. Great deal of strong connections. Moon Uranus, I think, tends to add a little more to the romance side of things.
I think the moon Uranus has a lot to do with their sense of freedom within the relationship.
Yeah.
Nobody's dominating somebody else. They respect each other's space, and that goes a long way. It's like if they were only children, they would understand each other.
Yeah, especially since, because they each connects with the others. Yes. So here we have Prince William and Catherine. Here's an interesting pairing because she is 5.5 months older than him. She was born, she's on the outside, so she was born right before a full moon eclipse, and he was born right after a new moon eclipse. So they're both eclipse babies, one solar, one lunar. We see their Mars are conjunct in the 10th. We see the Pluto's conjunct in the 10th. Saturn's a bit off, but contained between Mars and Pluto. Uranus conjunct in the 12th. Neptune tight conjunction in the 12th. He has a very close Venus Chiron conjunction in his 5th. And, his sun, moon, basically he's a new moon baby eclipse in his 7th house in Cancer, ruled by the moon.
The Prince William's Mercury finds some solace in the trine it makes to the Mars of both of them. In fact, you could even stretch it to one of Saturn's from 8 to 10 and 8 to 9 and 10, which I think also in the 6th house. So they view a lot of things very similar in that aspect between the pressures of the midheaven and the need for communication within that pressure. And it's in Mercury. So I think they talk pretty freely among each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it creates a very strong grand air trine between their Mars, their Mercuries, and her Venus.
Very nice.
It's one of the scenarios where a grand trine can be quite helpful, because they certainly seem to be taking advantage of that in their royal lifestyle. Here's their composite chart. We're running out of time, so I don't want to. It's here to look at. Here's their Davidson chart. So here the sun's at 11 Aries with Aquarius Leo axis. Their composite gives it 9 Aries with the Pisces Virgo axis. So here's a scenario where the shift from composite to Davidson, the axis shifts more than the sun does. Here's Meghan and Harry in their bi-wheel. Let's see. Her Uranus is on his south node in the 5th. Is Uranus at 9 Sag? Trines her sun and her Mercury in her first house in Leo. And as I recall, Harry in an interview once supposedly said that, when he first saw her, he knew that she was the one for him. The case of love at first sight.
Well, his Mars definitely plugs into her. Well, it's a bit wide, but at least is, we were talking before, by element, there's a big trine there between her fire planets and his fire planets,
Yes.
especially first to fifth.
The moon Chiron conjunction between them. A lot of healing.
Yes. Up here in the 10th, yes, the moon Chiron. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Her moon on his Chiron, or his moon on her Chiron. Yes. She is helping him to heal from the wounds he sustained with the death of his mother. And in response to that, he is making sacrifices and doing everything he can to protect her from the forces that he blames for taking his mother's life, that being the paparazzi and the negative press. I think we're going to shift gears right now. Oh, so here's their composite. Sun at 2 Virgo, Aries Libra axis, their Davidson, Taurus Scorpio axis, 5 Pisces sun. So everything shifts a bit and the sun moves into the opposite sign. Here we go. The wedding chart. I want to mention this briefly. So another factor that can influence how long a marriage may last is the wedding chart. Choosing a date and time for a wedding is an electional process. Good chart can help to support a marriage, while a challenging chart can allow cracks to develop. Some rules to consider when selecting a wedding date and time. You want a waxing moon. You want no moon voided course. You don't want Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde. And you want to try to keep Saturn and Uranus out of the 7th house. And ideally, you want fixed signs on the ascendant and descendant axes because fixed signs represent longevity. And then I've got some wedding charts in here for you. So here's Harry and Meghan's. Fixed signs on the ascendant descendant axis. In fact, all the angles are fixed. We have a waxing crescent moon, slightly more than 45 degrees ahead of the sun. New moon was 4 days prior to the wedding. Yeah. Don't know if they consulted an astrologer to pick the date and time, but it worked. William and Kate obviously didn't. Here we see a waning balsamic moon, just under 45 degrees behind the sun zodiacally. And there will be a new moon in about 3.5 days. But they have fixed signs on the angles. So, yeah. In some, oops. What happened here? Oh, there we go. Notice how Harry and Meghan have Leo Aquarius for their wedding chart. William and Kate have Leo and Aquarius for their wedding chart. Sometimes you make the best of what you've got. Here's Charles and Camilla. Again, this is a waxing new moon, less than 45 degrees ahead of the sun. In fact, the new moon was the day before. And there's that Leo Aquarius on the ascendant descendant axis again. So you have father and both sons getting married with that same Leo Aquarius axis. And they're royals, and so it shouldn't be too surprising. Here we have Charles and Diana. Cardinal points on the angles. And a balsamic moon, waning balsamic. So here, and you've got Saturn Jupiter conjunction at the 12th house. So there's some things going on here that one could, from an electional process, consider as not showing stability. Now, this could be a good electional chart depending upon what you're doing. If you're trying to get something finished, because that's what the balsamic moon is about, and you want cardinals on the angles to get you moving and get it done. But unfortunately, from a wedding standpoint, probably not a good choice. Here's Tom Hanks, Samantha Lou's wedding. Had to guesstimate on the time. But again, we see a waning moon. It's shortly after full. And even if we had set an earlier time during the day, it'd still be a waning moon. Here's, can't even see the title on this one. Oh, this is his wedding with Rita Wilson. Just before a full moon. So it's a waxing moon. So that's positive. Here's Elizabeth and Phillip. Oops. Waxing first quarter crisis back to square. So here we have a waxing moon. You want that. Here we have cardinals on the angles on the ascendant descendant, but you have fixed MCIC axis, which in the case of a royalty probably works well because you have that fixed aspect at the high point of recognition and authority, but you also have then the action-oriented aspects on the angles because that's what your life's going to be about. Here's the future meetups. Here's the thank you. That's the wrap up for this. All of this will be available. Yay, there we go. Wait. Eventually, hopefully within the next couple of days. Thank you all for coming and putting up with us. Any more questions? If you've got other questions and comments, you're more than welcome to email me after this. You can also email me if you want me to just send you the PDF file of the slideshow, and so you can study some of those charts more, and the recording link and everything else. Answer.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the midpoint thing. I think we had a really good discussion today about these charts and the fundamentals of looking at the different types of charts that you have in evaluating a relationship. And it seems to me very important. I still think my favorite way is the chart comparison, but I really hope you can see the kind of earth-shaking little way that the Davidson chart, which is just comparing where you actually had your nativity, was so fascinating, and it also was often so accurate. So that's what I want to say. You never can tell when you might find something that is something that you can use that's very useful. And I had never done Camilla's chart with, it was completely new to me. So I found it very interesting to see the kinds of suggestions of how they both were attracted to each other. And one other thing is, where's Cornelia? She's still here?
But I'm here.
I want you to look at that book, Web of Relationships. You were in it. Do you remember that book?
Yes.
I'm in it too. I was looking at it and I was surprised. I know her, and so we were both in the same book. That's very interesting to me.
I never noticed. I haven't looked at it for a long time.
I hadn't either. For some reason, it fell out of my bookshelf. Actually, I was pulling another book out, and there it was. And I thought, whoa! And then I saw your name. I said, this can't be, and it was. So it's quite unique that we discovered this that far down the road from that, you know, having it. Anyway, just don't take everyone's time listening to us talk about the publication, but it was fun to notice that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll have to look.
Yeah, so I just really want to thank you for this. And my son's getting married on the 22nd of March. He informed me. So it's like, no.
So how does the chart for their wedding time look?
I didn't do it. Yeah. I didn't.
March 22nd.
That's what they say now.
You should do it, Jim, quick. We could look at it fast and get some chime-ins.
Almost afraid.
March 22nd, 2021.
Yep.
What's the city?
Huh?
What's the city?
Oh,
what city and state? Where are they doing it?
Not sure exactly, but probably LA is fine to put.
It's going to be in Southern California.
It's in California. Yeah, it's near here.
Perfect.
It's very near.
Yep. Yeah, can we do it quick, Jim?
Okay, hang on, here we go.
The little you know, ninth inning challenge.
Boy.
Excitement. That would be a cool way to end it. Think about it.
Sounds good to me.
What time of day is the wedding scheduled for?
They, you know, they haven't told me yet. I'm assuming it's going to be afternoon or something like that, not early morning.
Yeah, it's a Monday, so
Yeah,
probably mid-late afternoon.
probably. Yeah.
Let's try this.
After lunch, yeah.
Okay. Let me get back into screen sharing mode. Sharing is caring. Where are you?
It's a good idea.
Okay, so this is set for 5 p.m. on the 22nd in Los Angeles. Here's the good news. One, you've got a waxing moon. Sun's at 2 Aries, moon's at 18 Cancer. So yeah, it's moving away from the first quarter square towards the full moon, but it's waxing, and that is good. Depending upon the time of day, if it's earlier, they could have a Leo Aquarius ascendant descendant axes. Around this time, we're seeing Virgo Pisces. Later, you get to, Libra Aries. So let's hope it might be a little earlier so that you can get to a Leo Aquarius. Let's see how much earlier would we have to go. Not that much, actually. You see, if we just back up an hour to 4 p.m., now we have Leo and Leo Aquarius on the ascendant descendant. And so there you got good fixed signs. In fact, you got fixed signs on all the angles. So that's good. Don't have to worry. If it gets too much earlier.
I don't think so.
Here we are at 2 p.m. Now we have Saturn in the 7th house. Cardinal angles, not so good.
But it is trining Mercury. I mean, Mars. There's Saturn trine Mars. Of course, that'll be all day. So let's move it around again.
Yeah. So if we want to go a little bit later. Ideally, like I say, in the if you're in the 3 to 4 o'clock area, that's fine. Even a mutable is not so much an issue because you still don't have any bad bodies in the 7th. And you'd have to go pretty late, down to 8 p.m. before you get Uranus into the 7th house.
I don't think it's going to do that, but my son it's taken him a while because he's actually 42. It's taken him a while because he has a Venus Saturn tight conjunction in his chart, so it's taking him a while to find.
And the moon's not void of course. Mars isn't retrograde, Venus isn't retrograde, Mercury's not retrograde. Yeah, it's as days go, it's a good day. First, yeah, it's just a matter of what time in the afternoon they're going to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing it.
If they opt for something early, let's see here. Even a noon wedding, it's take a long lunch break and get married. I mean, both get back to work. Everything is still okay.
Okay. Is there any way you could email me or send me a copy of this? Or
sure. What time would you like me to send you?
Well, maybe let's see. Let me think.
I'll send you the 4 p.m.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm picking up. 4 p.m.
I'll send you the 4 p.m. And what you can do, whoops, here we go. What we can do then is when you find out what time it's scheduled for, let me know and I can run a new chart at that time, if it's not 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Because he just informed me of this, so it's like a couple days ago.
Oh, we're getting married on the 22nd, Mom. What time? Yeah. I don't know. We'll figure that one out when we get there.
So do I just need to give you my email? to you?
Yeah.
It's that one that I have heartfelt asked to.
Yeah. Just send me an email
Okay.
to Jimmy_Eddy@hotmail.com. JIMMY_Eddy EDDY @hotmail.com.
Oh, EDEY?
Yeah, EDDY. As I like to tell people, my middle name is Edward after my Uncle Pete.
Oh.
I see one or two people caught it.
Thank you.
I think that's wild. My ex-wife had a first cousin, Uncle Pete. Because he was also her uncle, but he married her mother's sister. But that's because her father was the youngest, and
Thank you guys very much.
it got complicated. And no, not from Kentucky, not even from Arkansas, South Dakota. Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you all for showing up, sticking with us. My apologies for the foobar with the bad link. I'll make sure that does not happen for March.
I'm just so glad to finally get on.
Yes, me too. I was sitting there wondering, where the heck is everybody? And I was beginning to think I had sent out a bad link. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day to all you ladies.
Yay.
And to the, let's see, the gentlemen that are left. Stay safe, stay well, and COVID free. And we will see you in 4 weeks.
Okay.
Bye.
March 14th, noon, midpoints. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
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 End of an era. Yep.